All right, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be giving you guys another deck tech for historic. I've been having a lot of fun in this format and just playing Arena in general lately. This deck is an aristocrat style deck, a Mardu Aristocrat style deck. I'm calling Judith Priest, haha, because we are running Judith Scourge Diva and Priest of the Forgotten Gods as two kind of important pieces in this aristocrat style deck. So let's kind of just get into it here and see how everything fits together. If you've never played this style of deck before, the goal, the main focus of the deck is to play creatures that have synergies with dying and sacrificing triggers and stuff like that. So we'll start in the one drop slot here and make our way over. We got a total of 12 one drop creatures. We got Hunted Witness, who, when he dies, creates a 1/1 white soldier creature with lifelink, which is good. Good sacrifice outlet there. We got the Cauldron Familiar, which when it enters the battlefield, each opponent loses a life and you gain a life, and then you can sacrifice a food to return it from the graveyard to the battlefield. And I'm sure everyone's familiar with that interaction with Witch's Oven here. Just get a nice loop going. This card and this card combo fits right into this style deck here and ends up being really good. And then we got the Footlight Fiend, who, when it dies, it does 1 damage to any target, which is okay. It actually ends up being all right in certain scenarios. It could be that you want Footlight Fiend to be another token producing creature. There's some out here like let's see here, token. Garrison Cat is one that just came out. So that might be something to try out, but for now, Footlight Fiend seems to be pretty decent. The extra damage is can be pretty relevant. And then over in our 2-drop slot here, we got Priest of Forgotten Gods. This card is really cool. So it says sacrifice 2 other creatures. Any number of target players each lose 2 life and sacrifice a creature. So typically you're just targeting your opponent. But if you need to sacrifice another creature, you can target yourself too. You'll just have to take 2 life. And then when you do that, you add 2 black mana and draw a card. This is a really good engine for the deck to help draw, clear their board, and get some sacrifice triggers here. And then we got 4 copies of Cruel Celebrant, who, whenever another creature or planeswalker you control dies, each opponent sacrifices 1 life and you gain 1 life. So this is one of the main payoffs for having our creatures die in the deck. And then we have 2 copies of Croxa, which ends up being really good. You get to have them discard a card or do 3 damage to them when it enters the battlefield, and then it sacrifices itself, which is pretty nice. And so you get the triggers from Cruel Celebrant, and then there's some other synergies in the deck here too. One cool thing to do is to put full control mode on, so then when it enters the battlefield, its triggers go on the stack and you can respond to them. So then you could sacrifice it with Witch's Oven, which says if you sacrifice a creature with power 4 or greater, you'd get 2 food tokens. So you can actually get 2 food tokens out of sacrificing Croxa, which is good. And then one of the main pieces of our deck here, which is the engine that kind of keeps our deck alive and going, is Midnight Reaper. And it says whenever a non-token creature you control dies, Midnight Reaper deals 1 damage to you and you draw a card. So all these sacrifice triggers and death triggers you're getting, you'll be drawing cards too. And you don't have to really worry about the life loss because we're going to be gaining life along the way. So that's really good. Then we got 2 copies of Woe Strider, which is just a instant speed sacrifice outlet for no mana cost, which is really good. And yeah, that's essentially what it's in here for. And then you got 2 copies of Judith, the Scourge Diva, which it gives all your other creatures +1/+0, which is actually really relevant because our creatures are not the most threatening on their own. So giving them another power actually makes it so our board is threatening as well. And she says whenever a non-token creature you control dies, you can do 1 damage to any target, which is quite relevant, the any target wording. And then we also have 2 copies of Mayhem Devil, which says whenever a player sacrifices a permanent, Mayhem Devil deals 1 damage to any target. And so the reason we're splitting these is that they're both kind of good in their own ways. Mayhem Devil is better than Judith for the sole fact that when you have the Witch's Oven combo with the Cauldron Familiar, when you sacrifice a food and the Cauldron Familiar, you can do 1 damage to any target. But Mayhem Devil doesn't trigger if they destroy our creatures or if we block the creatures in the die. It's only when we sacrifice creatures or permanents, and when it works for when your opponent sacrifices permanents too, if that's what they're doing. So it works with Priests of the Forgotten Gods as well if we make them sacrifice a creature there, which is nice. So Mayhem Devil's quite good in that way, but we don't get just regular death triggers, which is why we got to split with Judith here too. And then on the top end, we have 2 Luminous Broodmoth, which ends up being really cool. So with all these death triggers we're having in our deck, we can recur all of our creatures. None of our creatures in the main deck here have flying, except for Luminous Broodmoth. So when we bring them back, there's some cool stuff we can do there. Giving flying, and we can either fly over the top or get reuse our death triggers that way, which is cool. Another option for that slot would be Teysa Karlov, and this is just doubles up on your death triggers. So whenever it's essentially like a panharmonic on for death triggers, and she also gives your creature tokens vigilance and lifelink, which isn't too relevant. We don't really have too many creature tokens, but a couple. But I think that Luminous Broodmoth is probably just a better choice because it allows us to have our creatures recycle themselves so they can still be on board, which is quite relevant. So might be something to play around with there. But yep, that's kind of the gist of the deck there. We're running 22 lands. I'll put a link in the description for the deck list so you can see everything we're running there. A couple copies of Castle Lochtwain. Onto the sideboard here, we got just some regular stuff, a Fry to deal with blue decks, a couple Kaya to hate on graveyards, and low converter mana cost decks, some Theater of Horrors, which allows us to kind of keep going through our deck in those grindy matchups or against control and stuff like that. Some Vraska's Contempt to take care of creatures and planeswalkers. Kaya's Wrath to wipe the board. 1 Gruesome Menagerie, which for those grindy games, it can just put us back online actually if we run out of steam and we draw into this and our board is wiped or something. We can get back like a Midnight Reaper and a Priest of Forgotten Gods and a Hunted Witness or something. So go down the line 1, 2, 3, reanimate all those. A couple Angrath for control matchups and whatnot, and a couple of Heliod Intervention to deal with artifacts and enchantments. And yeah, that is a deck. I'll be playing some games of this deck very soon, so stay tuned for that. Thanks a lot, guys. We'll see you next time.